Just final words. First of all, thank you all for all participants and attendants. I would just like to end up with slightly more upbeat note, because talking about geopolitics and financing is a recipe for depression. I think that we are doing much better. And I would like to quote someone who was actually a graduate of the MA program here, Ivo Minsen from Switzerland. He's a good friend of mine, and he's now a very successful journalist in the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. And he likes to joke always that if you try hard, really, really hard, and you add some extra effort, you can find that even Swiss history is interesting. So, and then he adds, but nothing compares to Russian history and Soviet history, which is so fascinating, and on and on and on and on. And I would just like to remind ourselves that we are blessed and with our choice of probably the most fascinating things, the history, politics, sociology, that you can name it, that we are doing. And this center is providing not just the umbrella, but also the intellectual resources for doing this stuff. We'll go, I'm allowed for 1 minute nostalgia with Bob here, Bob Cruz. I remember when we came to Colombia at the time. So I came from Israel, and I applied, I sent my applications, and I wrote in my application letter that I want to specialize in the 1940s, 1950s, post-war, etc. And I also applied to Colombia, and is Gail here? She's not here, but she has something to do with it. So usually when you get rejection, you get some, okay, you're very nice and all the stuff, but we had so many applicants, and maybe some other place. So I got such a letter from Berkeley, and then another personal letter from the late Reggie Zelnick, who was reminded several times here, I think, today. And he wrote, you know, you have such a fine file, but with your interest, you should have applied to political science. Because post-1945 was classified, categorized as political science when I applied to this. So I went to Columbia, and then at Columbia, in the first seminar, we had to introduce what you want to do when you grow up, which means what dissertation you want to write. And I said, I want to write about the post-war. And there was a professor there, Leo Hameson, who looked at me very attentively and said, yes, Weiner, 1840s is fascinating. I said, no, 1940s. And he gave me one of his stony looks, and he said, okay, where? And I said, Ukraine. And then he looked at me like, what the hell am I doing here? Post-war, Ukraine, which was not part of anything, studying. And then he asked the other question, and what sources you're going to get? And I said, in the archives. And he said, the archives are closed. And I said, with a lot of chutzpah, it will be open. Lo and behold, 2 years later, they were open, and I got lucky. Bob Cruz specialized in Central Asia, something that did not exist much at the time. So it's not necessarily a recommendation, try your luck, things will work out, but they did work out. So what I want to say is simply, we are in a fascinating field that are not just opportunistically based on what the government does. We're doing it based on intellectual fascination, individual, and we try to support it institutionally. I'm not nonchalant about fundraising and money. We're doing our best now to do that, and we will have good news. Cannot talk about it, but we will have good news soon. And the main point, nevertheless, is the intellectual fascination that we are doing in this population and region, that it's getting larger and larger. Fine with me, fine with us, I think, but this is the main drive, and this center is the institution that provides so many resources for that. So with this, thank you all for coming today.